Welcome back to Sumantra course. This is the day 14th and the final episode of our Python basic full course. And today we are going to learn what are files and why we use them and how to perform various operations on file. A file is a collection of data or information that is stored on disk or a device. A file can have any type of content such as text, images, audio, video, etc. A file can also have any format such as .txt, .jpg, .mp3, .mp4, etc. Files are very useful for storing and manipulating data and information in your code. You can use files to save the output of your code for later use or analysis, load the input of your code from an external source or file, share your data and information with other programs or users, organize your data and information in a structured and readable way. For example, suppose you have a program that generates some random number and prints them on the screen. You can use a file to save the output of your program in a text file so that you can use it later or share it with someone else. You can also use a file to load the input of your program from a text file so that you can use different or predefined numbers in your program. To work with files in Python, you need to open them first and close them later. Opening a file means creating a connection between your code and the file so that you can read or write the file. Closing the file means terminating the connection between your code and the file so that you can free up the resources and avoid errors. To open a file in Python, you need to use open function, which is a built-in function that takes the file name and the mode as an argument and returns a file object that you can use to access the file. The syntax for using the open function is following. The file name is a string that contains the name and path of the file that you want to open. The mode is a string that specify how you want to open the file, such as reading, writing, appending, etc. We'll learn more about the modes later in the video. For example, let's open a file called numbers.txt, which is a text file that contains some number. We'll first create a new file, a text file. We'll call it numbers.txt. It should be parallel to our main file in the directory structure, and we'll add few numbers and we'll save it and close it. Now we'll write a code to open the file numbers.txt. So we'll define file object as open. We'll write the name of the file. The editor will give it automatically and we'll open it in a read mode. And when we run it, so it will open a file numbers.txt in a read mode and returns the file object that we assigned to a variable file object. We can use this file object to read the file. So we'll print the type of the file object and we run it and we'll get a io.io text wrapper. This is the file object that will be used for file manipulation. To close a file in Python, you need to use the close method, which is a method that belongs to the file object and does not take any argument. The syntax for using close method is file object dot close, and we run it. The file object is the variable that holds the file object that you want to close, and it will close the file and terminate the connection between our code and the file. You should always close the file that you open, as it is a good practice and it can prevent errors and resource leaks. However, there is a better way to open and close files automatically, which we will learn later in this video. Once you have opened a file, you can read or write the file using various methods that belong to the file object. These methods allow you to access the content of the file in a different way, such as reading or writing the whole file, a single line or multiple lines. To read a file in Python, we'll use read method. So the read method reads and returns the entire content of the file as a single string. The syntax for using the read method is file object dot read. The file object is the variable that holds the file object that you want to read. So let's just read the file numbers.txt that we have opened earlier using read method. So we'll assign the content of the read method in a content variable, and then we'll print content. Now we run it, and this will print the entire content of the file as a single string on the screen like this. There is another method, readline. This method reads and returns the next line of the file as a string. The syntax for using readline method is similar to read line. The file object is the variable that holds the file object that you want to read. So let's read the file numbers.txt that we opened earlier using readline method. First, we open the file. So we'll read the first line of the file and assign it to a line1 variable. Then we'll print the line1. We'll again read the second line of the file and we'll print the second line. And when we run it, this will print first and second line of the file as a string on the console. Notice that the readline method moves the cursor to the next line after reading a line, so that the next call of the readline method will read the next line of the file. If there is no more line to read, the readline method will return an empty string. The next method is readlines. This method reads and returns all the lines of the file as a list of strings. The syntax for using the readlines method is file object readlines. The file object is the variable that holds the file object that you want to read. Let's read the file numbers.txt that we opened earlier using readlines method. So we have file object.readlines. We'll assign this into a lines variable, and then we'll print lines. When we run it, this will print all the lines of the files as a list of string like this. Notice that the readlines method return a list of strings where each string is a line of the file with a new line character /n at the end. You can use list methods and operations to access and manipulate the lines you need. Now to write a string to a file, the syntax is file object dot write with string. So the file object is the variable that holds the file object that you want to write. The string is the string that you want to write to the file. So let's write a string to a file called hello.txt, which is a new file that we open in the write mode. So we'll first write the name of the file hello.txt and we'll open it in the write mode. And then we'll use file object.write a string hello world to the file. When we run it, this will write hello world to the file hello.txt. If the file does not exist, it will be created, and if the file is already exists, it will be overwritten. So over here, hello.txt is created and hello world text is written on the file hello.txt. Similar to readline, there is a method called writelines which writes a list of strings to the file. The syntax for using writeline method is file object writelines and then list of strings. So for example, let's write a list of strings to a file hello.txt that we have just created and opened in write mode. So the list of string would be hello world. This is a test. We'll add /n character at the end of every list element. Goodbye world /n. And when we run this code and check the hello.txt, we can see that this function has written the list of string to the file hello.txt. Notice that we have to add the new line character /n at the end of each string. Otherwise, the strings will be written on the same line. When you open a file in Python, you need to specify the mode that you want to open the file in. The mode determines how you can access and modify the file, such as reading, writing, appending, etc. There are 6 common modes that you can use to open the files in Python. R is the default mode, and it means to open the file in read-only mode, which means that we can only read the file but not modify it. If file does not exist, it will raise a file not found error. Let's create a simple program where we are opening a file. Open, say, test.txt in the read mode. Now we will read the content of file and print it. Now we will try to write something on the file test.txt, and then finally we'll close it. First we'll create the file test.txt and write some text and save it. Now if we run it, we can see that R mode has allowed us to read the file but not to write it. And it raises an exception, unsupported operation not writable, at the function called file.write. So to make file writable, we'll use W mode. This mode opens the file in write-only mode, which means you can write to the file but not read from it. This mode will create the file if it does not exist or overwrite it if it already exists. For example, we'll define a file object, open, we have hello.txt, we'll open it in write mode. So we have hello.txt and we'll say file object.write. My name is Sumantra, and if we run it and if we check the hello.txt file, this is overwritten. If we try to read the file and print the lines and we run it, it will give us an error or an exception that is not readable because we have opened it in write mode only. So there is a mode which stands for append mode, which means that you can write to the file but not read from it. This mode will create the file if it does not exist or append it if it already exists. For example, if I open the hello.txt file in append mode and then write a text goodbye world and run it, it will append the goodbye world to the end of the file. To make it more readable, we can add a new line and then run it. So it has again appended goodbye world one more time. There is one mode which is called R+, which opens the file in read-write mode, which means that you can read and write to the file. This mode will open the file if it exists or raise an error if it does not exist. For example, if I open hello.txt in read plus mode and read the first line of code by calling readline on file object and then print line 1 and then I write something else, this is test, and we run it, so we can see that hello.text has 3 lines, and when we ran the program, it's printing the first line, and in the last, it's adding this is a test. So it is writing the string this is a test to the file, overwriting the existing content from the current position. There's another mode which is called W+. This mode opens the file in read-write mode, which means that you can read and write to the file. This mode will create the file if it does not exist or overwrite it if it already exists. So if we open the hello.txt in W+ mode and if we write hello world and then there is a call called seek which moves the cursor to the beginning of the file if we pass a 0 as a parameter, and then we'll read the file into content and print the content. And when we'll run it, this will create a new file called hello.txt and write the string hello world to it. Then it will move the cursor to the beginning of the file and read the file. Then it will print the content of the file on the console. Similarly, there's another mode which is A+, which opens the file in read append mode, which means that you can read and write to the file. This mode will create the file if it does not exist or append to it if it already exists. For example, if we open the hello.txt in append mode and write a string, say goodbye world, and then seek the cursor to the beginning of the file and then read it and then print the content. This is all hello.world right now. And now if we run it, you can see it is appending goodbye world to the end of the file, and then it will move the cursor to the beginning of file and read the file and print the content to the output console. You can use different modes to open files in Python depending on how you want to access or modify the file. You should always choose the appropriate mode for your purpose and avoid unnecessary or harmful operation of the file. As we have seen before, you should always close the files that you open, as it is a good practice and it can prevent errors and resource leaks. However, sometimes you may forget to close the file, or you may encounter an exception that prevents the file from being closed. To avoid this, you can use the with statement, which is a special statement that allows you to open a file and automatically close it at the end of the block. The syntax for using the with statement is with open file name mode as file object and code that uses file. The with statement opens the file using the open function and assign it to a variable that you can use to access the file. The file object is only available inside the with block, and it will be automatically closed when the block ends, whether normally or due to an exception. For example, let's use the with statement to open and close a file. So we'll use with open hello.txt in read mode as file object content is equal to file object dot read, then we'll print content. Now if we run it, we'll get the content of the file hello.txt. Now let's try to access the file object outside the with block with file object.read, and we run it, we'll get the IO operation on closed file error. Notice that the file object is no longer available outside the with block and it is closed. The with statement ensures that file is always closed properly and safely. The with statement is the preferred and recommended way to open and close files in Python, as it is more concise and reliable than using open function and closed method. As we have seen before, you can use try except blocks to handle exceptions gracefully in your code. You can also use try except blocks to handle file-related exceptions such as file not found error, permission error, IO error, etc. File-related exceptions are exceptions that occur when you try to open, read, write or close a file and something goes wrong, such as the file does not exist, the file is not accessible, the file is corrupted, etc. To handle file-related exceptions, you need to use try except block, where the try clause contains the code that tries to access the file and the except clause contains the code that handles the exception. You can use specific or generic exception types depending on your needs. For example, let's use try except block to handle a file-related exception. So over here with open hello.txt as file object, we'll use try, then we'll try to read the file. Now we can catch an exception as E and then print, we can write N error occurred while reading the file. We can print the exception also, else we can print the content When we run it, it will print the content of hello.txt on the console. This will use the with statement to open the file hello.txt in read mode and assign it to variable file object. Then it will use try except block to try to read the file and handle IO error exception, which is a generic exception type that covers various file-related errors. If an IO error exception occurs, it will print a friendly message and the exception object. If no exception occurs, it will print the content of the file on the screen. You can use try except block to handle file-related exception in your code and prevent your code from stopping or crashing. Congratulations on making it to day 14 of our Python Basics 14-day full course for beginners. You have completed an incredible journey through Python's core concepts, and I'm thrilled to have been a part of your learning experience. You have not only learned the basics of Python, but also gained a solid foundation to build upon as you continue your programming journey. Thank you for following along with the Python Basics 14 full day course for beginners playlist. If you found these lessons helpful, please like the videos, share them with others who might benefit, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you want to revisit any of the lessons, the playlist is available in the comment and details section. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. Happy coding!